I've shared with all of you what I do after a game to review the game and learn from it. But something else I've been doing is pre-game journaling. So this is a new thing that I've started to do that comes before I play each game. And it's a little bit of a reflection on what I want to do during the game, what kind of goals I want to accomplish during the game. And it feeds directly off of my previous review of the last game that I played, because usually that will highlight some of the bigger mistakes that I've made. And so going into the next game, it's good to have a game plan and emphasize certain things that you want to work on and certain mistakes you want to avoid. If you're making the same mistakes over and over again each game, maybe it's because you haven't approached each game with an aim to resolve some of those mistakes. So that's something that I've been doing. I basically just sit down and take like 5 minutes or less even to just write down a few notes on what I want to do this game. And it looks something like, lately I've been losing a lot of large groups, so I'm going to pay extra careful attention to my groups and try to play more solid. And maybe lately I haven't been good with finding the biggest yosei or end games, and I want to try to pay attention to that. So I do those things. I write down certain things I do want to do, certain things I don't want to do, and I just play the game, and I try to remember those things. I keep those things in mind while I play the game. And sure enough, I've been successful at being unsuccessful. I have not been winning since I started doing this. And that's not to say that this is something that is to blame, maybe it is to blame, but in a good way. Hear me out. Because I have shifted away from losing these giant groups, maybe my game has stabilized, hopefully, theoretically. My game has stabilized into losing in a way where I am not losing giant groups all the time, and at least I'm staying connected, and now all I have to do is add some spice to my game in order to get that fire back, that reading, fighting, calculation that I actually really enjoy. And so now I'm playing a little too slow, I've noticed. So maybe in my next pregame journal, I'll write down that, you know what, you've proved that you can play solidly and play through a game without losing groups. Now it's time to see how you can turn up the heat, play some more aggressive moves. So that's something that I might write in my next journal, because I've been basically keeping all my groups stable, but I've been losing on points. And I hate that kind of game where nothing happens, nothing big dies. But it's something that I needed to try to do and learn. Welcome to Start Point, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board. And today I'm going to be talking about strategy and tactics. Now, some of you may think those two words mean the same thing. I think a lot of you will know the difference. But I'm going to do some illustration in regards to our beloved game of Go and talk a little bit about the difference between the two. Before I get into that, I want to comment on the kind of advice people used to generally give to people trying to improve in Go. On the one hand, you got this group of people who say you don't really need to do a lot of sumego or have any crazy reading ability. You can actually get to a pretty high level just by knowing the direction of play and knowing what is the biggest point on the board. Things like that are more important. And then you've got another camp of people who say, you know what? You can try to learn as much theory as you can. You can try to learn all this Fuseki, Joseki opening stuff and strategy and whatever. But you really, when it comes down to it, getting to Dan level is really just about improving your reading ability. And so you've got these two opposing camps, and oftentimes when you read these pieces of advice in isolation, they make perfect sense on their own. But when you scour the internet for all the wisdom of how you're supposed to improve and Go, and you'll find a wide variety of advice that conflict with each other. I think partially that's because everyone has a different path to the Dan level in Go. and everyone has different strengths and weaknesses and will benefit from focusing on different things. Though the illustration I want to make here with this contradicting advice is that we are looking at two separate hemispheres of Go ability: strategy on one hand and tactics on the other hand. So let me just do a little bit of a breakdown of what those two things are. They're not actually the same thing. They sound like similar things, but let's talk about strategy first. Strategy, let me just list some things that I personally think as characterizing strategy: opening and direction of play, identifying big points on the board, understanding weak and strong groups, Joseki selection, choosing which Joseki to choose in which situation, when to treat stones lightly, when to save stones or sacrifice stones, when to tanuki because something else on the board is more important. Essentially, strategy asks, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to do? It's a very big question, and it doesn't really answer itself through specific stones on the board, but more through the willpower of what those stones are trying to do. Tactics, on the other hand, a list of things that I think relate to tactics may include things like life and death, fighting intuition and close contact fundamentals, Tsuji, good and bad shape, capturing races, endgame, and Yosei. So, if you've noticed a pattern, strategy asks, what are you trying to accomplish, right? This is something that I said earlier about strategy. Then tactics asks, how are you trying to accomplish it? So we've got the what and the how. And let's ask, which is more important? Maybe it's a personal question. Which is more important to you? Which one comes more naturally to you? Which one do you have an affinity for? Do you prefer thinking about the abstract ideas and trying to zoom out all the time, leading your armies this way and that, and understanding the relationships between everything across the board? Or are you a soldier? Do you like getting down and dirty? And do you like to find the little techniques that can trip up the opponent and poke his eyes out? Well, let me tell you a little bit of an allegory to illustrate which is more important, strategy or tactics. Okay? Two brothers lived in a small home in the countryside, about a mile away from the nearest water well. The older brother, tasked to retrieve water from the well, sets out with a large bucket and a bowl to transfer the water into it from the well. On the way there, he becomes exhausted and has barely enough energy to fill the bucket. After filling the bucket, he tries to lift it, but it's too heavy for him. He drags the bucket on the ground, spilling half the water on the way back, eventually passing out due to heat exhaustion. Now, he had a plan to get the water, but he was not strong enough. He did not have enough endurance to carry it out. Back at home with an empty bucket, he thinks about this for a bit and realizes, why didn't I ask my younger brother to do this? He is much stronger than I. He has so much more endurance and stamina. He should be the one to do this, not me. So he asks his brother, hey, can you bring the water from the well? And the older brother, being so exhausted from the trip that he absolutely failed in because he was not strong enough, gets into bed and he rests, and he has confidence that his younger brother, who is much more, strong, much stronger, he will do a better job because he's bigger and stronger than him. Hours later, the older brother wakes up from his nap and comes out of his room, expecting to find a bucket full of water. But he finds the bucket in the room and it's only filled to about a tenth of the way. He wonders, what happened to all the water? And then in the distance, he sees his brother walking back home from the direction of the well. His clothes are drenched with sweat and he's exhausted. It looks like he's going to pass out. And as he draws nearer, the older brother notices him holding a tiny little cup. The younger brother walks up to the bucket with the cup and dumps a little tiny splash of water inside the bucket and says, "I'm not going back to that well." He pants, he crumples to the ground, and he says, "This is my 20th trip. You know how exhausting it is to climb all the way down that well to get the water each time?" The older brother stares in disbelief as he realizes that his brother has not even been using the bucket and pulley that was built into the well. Okay, was that a bit of a stretch, or could you make the connection between strategy and tactics here? What I was trying to illustrate with this story was that the first brother, the older brother, represents strategy, and the second brother, the younger brother, represents tactics. The first brother has great, he's got a mind that can think and he knows what to do. Go to the well, use the bucket that's built into the well. He prepares himself with a little bowl to scoop things out and brings the bucket back, but he just isn't strong enough. He just can't carry the task out. He knows what to do, but he doesn't know how to do it. Whereas the younger brother represents tactics and clearly a little deficient in the ability to plan efficiently his actions, and decides to bring a tiny cup to fill the bucket rather than just bring the bucket itself. And, being someone who's so strong, he could clearly have lifted the bucket full of water all the way back, but just could not conceive of that happening. So all I'm trying to say is that you need both strategy and tactics to play the game of Go. I think many of us out there focus only on one half, and we're blind to the other half. So many of us are in love with studying openings and joseki and theorizing and hypothesizing about what the best position is and what this is and what that is. And when it comes down to the game, you make a silly mistake and you just blow the game. Whereas others, and I'm looking at the Fox players over here, who are very focused on tactics, don't really think. They don't really think about where to go with the game. They don't really think, is this even worth it? They just try to kill, or find moves that work out locally. And they're very clever at it, but somehow lose the game. So you need a balance of the wisdom of what to do and the knowledge of how to do it. And I think this is something that's very interesting about Go, because it presents the sheer variability and skill sets between all players. And that's what makes Go so interesting and entertaining, because you've got one game where White is leading by 99% AI evaluation the entire game, and then all of a sudden at the end they just lose their whole empire to a basic life and death problem, or the other player plays some kind of tricky move and is able to swallow up an entire group and win the game. Or in another game, Black takes an early lead by finding a brilliant Tsuji to kill White's corner, and consistently finds little moves that just annoy White and take White's groups and stones. But when they add up all the points, you realize that White won the game. And Black is just scratching his head thinking, what did I do wrong? I felt like I was killing everything, because White had the better, bigger picture knowledge. Go is a synthesis of many skills, and not even mentioning the physical and mental factor of the game. So take a look at yourself, and I think this is something that I'll always emphasize, is always look at your game and think, why am I losing and why am I winning? And you'll find what you need to work on based on these different dimensions of the game that could possibly be going right and wrong for you. And there's a lot of things. And so try to open your mind to all the different possibilities and maybe try not to focus too hard on one thing for too long, because sometimes we do get stuck on one idea and we think that that's the solution to our breakthrough, but we realize we're not focusing enough on a completely other aspect that can help improve our game dramatically. All this talk of strategy and tactics, and especially the fact that we are sometimes blind to one side or another, reminds me of something I call the Q player's curse. Well, us Q players, maybe we're cursed in more than one way, but one of them is we have an endless cycle where we look at our mistakes and we try to fix them and we work really hard at it, but we don't realize that we're not tackling the root of the issue, and that you made the mistake 20 moves ago, and if you just approached the game in a proper way, you wouldn't have even ended up with the problem you're trying to solve right now. That's just something that is really hard for us to see sometimes, because AI even tells you, hey, this is where you made the mistake. But if you were to actually get it reviewed by a stronger player, they may say, well, I mean, you kind of made this mess yourself. And yeah, even I would have made a mistake like that in that situation. So your real mistake was how you strategized this game. And all we can do is just try to be more aware that that can happen. And also just try to reach out to more players to see if they can spot some of our blind spots. My current state in what I feel like I'm doing wrong with my games, I think I'm in actually a good place, because I've been losing due to strategical errors, in my opinion. Maybe there's some really big tactics. I do know that I have been missing some tactics, but overall it feels more like I haven't been throwing away games by misreading and doing things that didn't work and things like that, and more just like overarching decisions that I haven't been able to make. Those are kind of like the harder obstacles I feel to overcome, but I like this because it gives me an opportunity to say, hey, I have put in the due diligence to make my reading and tactic ability to catch up to the level I'm at. And now I'm at the level where I don't know what to do next, and I don't know how to progress. And now I need someone to tell me how I can do that. And so I've been trying to see if I can find stronger players to get advice from, and we'll see how that develops in the future. But I mean, as a general rule of thumb, if you look at your games and you think that your problem is tactics, you see that you're not seeing certain things, you make silly mistakes, you slap your forehead a lot, and you lose groups, things die, right? Things like that, and you think things are connected when they're not, then yeah, that's when your problem is tactical. And the way to solve that was probably through doing a lot of life and death problems, strengthening your reading and training your reading a lot, and studying Tsuji, things like that. On the other hand, if you feel like you don't know why you lost the game, I feel like that's a very big sign that your problem is strategy. And so in that case, you should probably review your games, reflect on them, think about why you might have lost, and really try to figure out the bigger picture, and get a teacher, get stronger players to tell you and give you some advice on what you could have done better. And maybe this is a point where reading some books, I would not overdo it. Reading some books about strategy, reading and watching some videos about what you should normally do in order to win a game of Go, that might help too, opening your mind to new possibilities. One common piece of advice that a lot of people give out in terms of advancing their game is to look at stronger players' games, right? Obviously you can look at pro games, but I think sometimes those games are a little too lofty for us to be looking at and understand. So oftentimes the common advice given is to look at some games that are maybe a few stones stronger than your level, and you'll be able to pick up some of the nuances better than if you were to just straight up review, a Lee Sedol game, right? But one piece of advice that I don't really see given out is to look at weaker players' games. And you might be wondering, like, why would I look at games of people who don't know how to play Go as well as I do. What kind of information could they possibly give you? And in a sense, that's true. You can't really learn new tactics or strategy from watching people play worse than you do. But one thing that I do know you can learn is a little more subjective rather than objective stuff. It's when you look at someone who doesn't play as well as you, who's several stones weaker than you, you'll notice that you know things that they don't, right? You'll notice they play moves that just you have something to say about them. You kind of think, well, that's probably not the best move here. And you notice that these people are at a level where they don't understand that. And so seeing that player struggle with certain concepts that you are comfortable with can help you contextualize what you're struggling with and what that may look like to a stronger player from your vantage point, and what it may take and what it takes to break out of your current barrier. Because if you look at someone who's weaker than you and you look at their game and you see what you want to say to them and tell them how to improve and what they need to work on, you can oftentimes reflect that back to you and think, so does that mean that like when someone who is stronger than I am looks at my game, they have those things to say to me? What could I possibly be missing? And it can kind of help clue you in to why you're not improving. And I feel like every now and then, if you just kind of do a quick look through a weaker game, you can kind of see, well, what kind of principles have I learned? And what kind of principles am I working on right now? And what kind of principles can I work on in the future to get stronger? Every level, there is a certain foundation of knowledge, and you want to see what part of that foundation you're missing that is keeping you from the next level. Now, I want to try something new. I'm going to see how long this lasts, but I felt like maybe it would be a good idea for me to look at some maybe DDK level games and give some soft advice, right? Not something like stuff that you would learn from a YouTube video and actual moves that I could help you with, but just kind of like a guidance advice. And maybe I can kind of see if I can farm this kind of advice for anyone who is a DDK or just trying to improve their game. Things that I notice about what other players may be doing, and I can kind of just, spitball here. And I did look at a game, and I looked at what kind of moves were being played and what I wanted to say to these DDK players that I randomly chose. And I think one of the things that I want to emphasize to these players is Joseki awareness. That's one of the first things that I notice if I look at a lower level player's game, that they go off Joseki like really quickly oftentimes. And it just signals that people don't know what the Joseki are. And look, I know that Joseki isn't the most important thing in order to improve. You shouldn't be spending all your time memorizing Joseki, but there are certain ones that you should know at each level. And just knowing them can be a very big help. To learn what the Joseki is and what the Joseki isn't can help give you a sense of when you should be careful and when you should feel like this is a secure, normal game. And through that learning, you may not know, right, if someone plays off Joseki, how to punish that, but at least being aware that they did not play Joseki can help you kind of keep that in mind for future games. And maybe when you review the game, you can kind of zone in on that and say, hey, this person didn't play the Joseki here. What was I supposed to do here? Why is this not Joseki? And I feel like just having a fundamental, foundation of Joseki knowledge is a good thing for a lot of the beginning players. And you should build up your foundation. And when I say foundation, it's just super basic stuff, right? It's not anything complicated. We're not talking about Flying Knife or Avalanche or Taisha or anything like that. Just normal stuff. Because at every level, there is just kind of an understanding that people know certain joseki. At my level, I can expect certain joseki to be learned and certain joseki to be just kind of way out in the air for us and not in something that we don't know. But in order to get to the next level, you need to consistently and continually add little bits of nuanced joseki knowledge. And if your joseki knowledge is falling behind, I feel like that is an easy way to step up your game. And with that, we're going to go into a little bit of Go news. All right. We got the finale of the Samsung Cup. Drum roll, please. Well, before the drum roll, I want to just give a little bit of an overview of the Samsung Cup. It's been a while since they've actually played face-to-face for this, because last year was played online. Well, they were in the same room. If you don't remember, it was Chaejong versus Shinjin-seo for the final. And they were playing at separate desks in the same room, clicking on a computer screen. But now we've got an actual proper Go game of the Samsung Cup, face-to-face. Last year was Korea versus Korea in the finals. This year is China versus China. Ding Hao versus Xie Hao. And the drumroll comes, and the winner of the Samsung Cup this year is Ding Hao, defeating Xie Hao, who so valiantly overcame the giant obstacle of Shinjin-seo, falls to Ding Hao in the end. And with that, we get right into the Nongshim Cup. The Nongshim Cup is something that we have started a few months. I don't actually remember how long ago it was back, but this is the second round of the Nongshim Cup, and I want to give you a little bit of a recap of what the Nongshim Cup is. If you feel that Nongshim is a familiar name, it is that Nongshim, the one that makes the cup noodles, and it's actually, I think, called the Shin Ramen Cup. And this is a special, I think it's one of my favorite tournaments because of the setup is so interesting. It basically involves Korea, China, and Japan, the three major kingdoms of Go. And each country sends out 5 professionals to represent them. And these 5 professionals per country are kind of like their lives. And it's a knockout tournament. So we'll have one country face another, or the top player or the first player of one country face the first player of another country. Whoever loses that game, that player is out. And then the country is left with 4 remaining players. And that continues until 2 countries have no more players left. And there have been some exciting developments. Xie Hao, the one that got second place in the Samsung Cup representing China, currently ranked 19th or so on Go ratings, went on a steamroll of a 7-game win streak, beating Kyo Kagen of Japan, Byun Sang-il of Korea, Shibano Toramaru of Japan, Won Sung-jin of Korea, Ichiriki Ryo of Japan, Park Jong-wan of Korea, and Yu Zheng-chi of Japan. And that 7-game win streak in the Nongshim Cup is a tie for the highest ever winning streak in a single session of the Nongshim Cup. And so there's actually a bonus of 50 million won that was given to him for having such a large winning streak. And Xie Hao is China's first player in the lineup. So China has not lost a single player, leaving Japan and Korea with 1 player each until Korea's Shinjin-seo. Of course, it's Shinjin-seo, the last player of Korea to take down Xie Hao, getting revenge for taking him down in the Samsung Cup. And I think that's the end of the second round of the 25th Nongshim Cup. So we've got Shinjin-seo, who is currently at 1 win, and then who knocked out Xie Hao. And now China has 4 players left, including Zhao Chenyu, Ko Jie, Gu Zihao, and Ding Hao. And Japan has 1 more player left, that is Yama Yuta. So the next round and the final round of the Nongshim Cup will be in Shanghai from February 19th to 23rd in 2024. So far, looking at the Samsung Cup and the Nongshim Cup's results, it's looking like China's year. We'll see if Shinjin Seok can pull off another winning streak and knock out everybody else, all the Chinese players and the Yamauta. But that remains to be seen. And finally, in a little bit more of the Western news, we've got some AGA meeting updates with an article from the AGA written by Jay Matson, published in Paduk News, called What's New with the AGA? And I'll just kind of briefly go over the article. They had their board meeting mentioning things like the AGA president, Gurjeet Khalsa, hopefully I'm not butchering that name, who recently traveled to watch the Ing Cup final in China and the Korean Prime Minister Cup in Korea, and also apparently contacted the Ing Foundation and built some relations and gathered ideas for the AGA. They've been finalizing the dates for the 2024 Portland Go Congress. Not quite finalized yet, but they are going to be for mid-July. Looks like the AGA is also needing some volunteers. I imagine there are some passionate volunteers who are at risk of burnout. So if you have any interest in volunteering for the AGA, I don't know the proper outlets to go through, but I'm sure it's not difficult. Contact your local chapter, or I bet you could even contact the AGA directly and they would welcome you with open arms and give you ideas and pointers for how to get started. And I mean, that's something I love about the Go community, because we love Go. We love Go. We love the game. We love to support the community, and that's what we do, right? It's not, it's just a shared passion for all of us. And I feel like the volunteers that keep things running, thank you to all of them. And then we've got a new proposed point system for the World Amateur Go Championship. I don't know what the new proposed system is, but apparently there's a new one that will encourage strong players to play in more tournaments throughout the year. And then finally, another emphasis on that time change that I mentioned many episodes ago about the AGA moving towards Fisher time. So I guess the reasoning for Fisher time is to speed up the tournaments and get more rounds of Go in per day at tournaments. And I guess there's a number of ways you could try to speed up a tournament, but maybe Fisher gives you kind of a good predictability that allows you to schedule more appropriately. And so if you want to know what Fisher time is, and if you want to know about all the different time controls, there is an episode on that. So go check out that episode. If you scroll back to I think it was called Byoyomi, Fisher, Canadian, and more. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and then there's some streamer relations emphasis. They want to reach out and improve their relationship with streamers, which is great news, amazing news. This is a must. I would even say this is top priority. You need to have the marriage between the organized Go world and the entertainers of the Go world, and have them be one solid community promoting the game together. You can't have the AGA, doing everything on its own. You can't have the streamers doing everything on their own. Everybody needs support from each other, and I think that's great that there's a little bit of a mention about streamer relations. And with that, we're going to go right into listener mail. Okay, I have a late reply. I'm really sorry about this. I missed this particular email, but I thought it was such a nice email that I wanted to still cover it and read it and respond to it. And it's from Fred. Hi, Justin. I've been enjoying the podcast, so I thought I'd write in after listening to this week's episode to let you know and to respond to your origin story. I'm Fred from Johannesburg, South Africa, and I'm around 7Q. That's awesome. I feel like that's like one of the coolest things that I feel from this is that when I look at my stats, I see people, there are a lot of people from the United States listening, and that makes sense because I'm in the United States, but there are people from places like Johannesburg, South Africa, and it's cool to see that the podcast has such a reach around the world. So thank you, Fred, for writing in, and Fred has some more things to say. My Go journey started with the movie A Beautiful Mind in 2001. A friend and I saw the movie and were intrigued by the Go played in the movie. At the time, we didn't know anything about the game, but I saw a cheap set in a store and bought it. I found the rules online, printed them, and we started playing without knowing anything, just referring to the rules when necessary. I would love to have a record of those first few games. I'm sure they were very messy. That's actually fascinating that you mentioned finding the game in a store, because I don't see this game in a store anywhere. Is it different in Johannesburg? But okay, continuing on. My friend wasn't as into it as I was, so I found a local club in Johannesburg and started playing there. I got to about 11Q when life got in the way and I mostly stopped playing, just an occasional game online here and there. Then in 2016, when AlphaGo played Lycée et al., I watched the games live with interest. Being in IT, I was also very interested in the AI side of those matches. That brought me back into Go and I started playing online again, and also found local players and went back into semi-regular live meetups. That's my story, and oh yes, I did watch Hikaru, but Go brought me to it, not the other way around. Thanks for the great podcast. Kind regards, Fred. Well, thank you for your kind words, Fred, and thank you for writing it. I'm so sorry I didn't get to this wonderful little bit of listener mail that you sent in. Hopefully you're still listening and you can hear my response right now. But yes, I also did not watch Hikaru no Go until I actually started playing Go. And I was also kind of like more intrigued by Go when the 2016 stuff happened with AlphaGo, because I wasn't really playing at the time, but I was following along a little bit. But I love that story. That was a great story. It really shows us how some of us, there's Go in our hearts, and we just kind of pursue it, and it just follows us for the rest of our lives. Thank you again for writing in. Sam writes in, "Hi Justin, I really enjoyed the discussion of Go technology on the latest episode. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of playing on a screen. I keep hoping a VR or AR client for the game would come out because I think that would bring me more joy from online Go. I know that there was a project to create a VR client for OGS called Tengen Go, but I don't know what happened to it." Well, Sam, we have, I think, a very large number of IT people in the Go world, so let's try to make it happen, yeah? Like, there's got to be people out there who can put together a cool AR demo of the game of Go. So I want to see you guys apply yourself to this. Continuing on with Sam's letter. Relatedly, did you know that the ISIS board isn't the only AI board on the market? There is an awesome little bot from SenseTime that places the stones itself. Yes, I actually, when I didn't know what you were talking about until I clicked your link, and I do recognize that bot, though I'm not sure it's super commercially available. From the light reading that I did, it seems it's only available in China, but it's like this cool little bot that picks up the stone and then puts it on the board. It's really cool, though it does remind me of that really scary video I saw one time of this chess bot that kind of broke some kid's finger because it was pressing too hard down on the chess piece. But that's kind of scary, but hopefully our Go bots are more peaceful than that. Continuing on with Sam's letter. Also, I'm a former Santa Monica Go Club member, but moved to Chicago before the pandemic ended. We're close in strength, so maybe next time I'll visit LA, I'll visit the club and we can play. Thanks for all the great content, Sam. Well, I would love to catch a game with you sometime, though I mean, Santa Monica Go Club is actually a bit far for me, so I don't actually attend. I've been for that one tournament, and that's pretty much about it. But hey, you never know the people you run into. And then my old friend Rach has chimed in again to tell me how to pronounce his name. Your pronounce, or his or her name, I don't actually know. Your pronunciation of my username is correct. It's pronounced Rage. In regard to that restrict area feature of AI Sensei, as far as I understand it, the AI just starts a completely new analysis of only the stones in the selected area. I guess the area borders are then like edges of a board. In that sense, it should work as the tool you want for analyzing local Sumego on a board. I could be wrong, of course. That's what I thought, but from what I recall with that feature, sometimes I would restrict the area and it would try to suggest moves on the edge of my border. And maybe that's changed. I'll have to try it again to see if that works. But thanks for the clarification on. You tell me it's pronounced rage, but it still makes me want to say rage. Anyway. And then finally, there are no bleeping names left, has written in again to say the control click to jump to the point in the game when it was played actually also works on OGS. As for technologies I'd want to see, I'd like to have some algorithm that looks at a bunch of games and extracts interesting Sumego from there. I believe that is how chess websites such as Lichess generate their puzzles, but obviously it's easier for chess because every problem is a whole board problem. That's a really good insight because, although we do have whole board problems in Go, we have this weird thing where we isolate a tiny corner of the board and do a little problem from that. So I guess doing a Sumego extraction thing would be, again, it's like another computer challenge that is harder in Go than in chess, just like how it took much longer to develop a computer that was at a professional level. But I didn't know about that point control click feature on OGS. I tried to do it in a normal game. It didn't seem to work. So I guess it has to be in review mode or something. But anyway, thanks for writing in and thanks for letting me know. And if you want to be featured in a future episode of Starpoint, I will harvest your comments on whatever platform you found this podcast, whether it's YouTube or Reddit or Spotify. And if you have an opinion on strategy or tactics, please let me know. And I want to know if you think you're better at strategy or tactics. And another side question though, before we go, I want to know how strong you guys are. I might have to ask you guys this multiple times to really get more answers to find out. But I want to know around what strength my listeners are at. So if you could, throw in that little bit of information, that would be greatly appreciated. So comment wherever you're listening or shoot an email to starpointbaduk@gmail.com. That's starpointbaduk@gmail.com. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to be notified of future episodes. If you're on Spotify, go ahead and hit the follow. That would all be much appreciated. Thanks for listening and keep playing Go.